Hello, everyone, and welcome to the future of space. I'm your host, Daniel Fox. Our guest today is Barbara Belvisi. Barbara is the founder and CEO of Interstellar Lab, with its mission to design and build bioregenerative villages on Earth and beyond. She's the youngest woman founder of a venture capital fund in Europe and was considered by Forbes as the future of VC. She is among the top 100 Forbes List Women to follow in Europe and was in the top 10 women to watch in tech in France in 2018. Barbara, welcome to the future of space.
Thank you, Daniel. I'm very, very happy to be here with you today.
Well, I can't wait to delve deeper into all the amazing work that you're doing right now with Interstellar Lab. But before we get there, could you share with us your three words that for you capture the essence of space?
Um, Dream, hope, and life.
So, was space always a dream for you, even when you were younger, or you kind of stumbled into it at some point?
I know I was a very, very nerdy kid. Well, I was very passionate about space and passionate about the planet. So I was collecting all the NASA patches. Well, I'm French, and so we do have of course a space agency, but it's not as popular as NASA. And so when it comes to space, when you're a child, you're like, well, NASA was super cool. And so I was collecting all the patches and I had like so many books about the solar system, about space exploration, a lot of sci-fi books as well, like the Asimov, and so that was really, really, really into space and how we can become a multi-planetary species. But yeah, it was I'm the I was the black sheep in the family, thinking of all those topics, and no one was really concerned about it.
So, were there many dinners where suddenly you would express your interest or whatever you'd read, during the day, and your parents would be like, "Here we go again, Barbara with her dreams of going to space."
Yes, exactly. And mom remember that, but I don't very well. But apparently one night I stayed up super late, like until 2 a.m., and I did a huge board with a lot of like collage of like planets and everything to teach my former colleagues, students, pupils at school about the solar system. And so I just like did it by myself all night long and arrived at school and was explaining to them. And so I was I was really really funny.
She didn't take a picture, so for prosperity.
Oh, she kept the board. Yeah.
Excellent. Barbara, obviously we know, we read in the media and we see it in the news. There's an economic story of going to space for that pushes a lot of companies. There's a science story of going to space. There's a technology story of going to space. But beyond all those, what do you think is the human story of going to space?
I think it's actually not about human. I think we humans, our role here it's to protect life that is on this planet, and the drive for space exploration. I mean, this is a belief and intuition, you know. But what I feel is that the drive of humans going to space is more a drive that is coming from nature, like an instinct of survival, because nature knows it will at a certain point disappear from the surface of the earth because the sun will, will blow. And so in this survival mode, humans, we're kind of a tool, and we're part of this grand, this much bigger scheme where our goal is really to develop the technology and the system so we can bring life out there. And so that, I think, this is where the humans are part of this mission, which is much bigger than us. But
It's if we really look at the core of it, life has been growing in complexity for billions of years. Hopefully, with looking for that medium that would take it to the universe. I mean, one of the things that I always say: space is nature, the universe is nature. I don't believe that the fundamentals of life in the universe would be different than it is on Earth. Earth is part of the universe, and the reason why it is so large in scale is because it's working on numbers and scale. Like it needs to figure out all these little ingredients, the randomness of nature for some species to be able to go beyond the natural way. Let's put it this way. I mean, we are the first species that is able to do that, to give it to that, to that push. So why, on the planet, why would it increase in complexity to be limited to one planet where in a couple billion years it's going to be the end of it? It wants to continue and go, and that is what you're saying, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. Um, and it's kind of and I agree with you. Like, I mean, I don't think it's life, other form of life are fundamentally different from what we have here on this planet, in other parts of the our universe. Everything is, like, I think, is pretty much carbon based, and so if you go back to like the Big Bang and everything, you just um, but one thing that is true and fascinating to me is that if you look at our planet, we're kind of like we far in our galaxy, like we're in a very non-crowded place in our galaxy, and also our galaxy is located in a non-crowded place in the universe, and so we're kind of away from the center of the galactic action, I must say, and we're pretty new and young, and so I'm convinced there are other form of life and very advanced civilization, in our universe and somewhere else, that have already been traveling from one planet to another, probably from one system to another. Um, but there is something about here what we humans are trying to achieve in preparing for space travel. I think it's fundamental, but it's not in opposition to nature. It's as part of nature, exactly as you said it. And for me, there is a vision I really want to push, which is a future where we human travel with the life, um, with Earth life, with biological life. I think this is a future I really want to see, much more than one where we're traveling in space only with robots and very metallic, or pure AI robotic system. I want to push for a future that is a little bit more greener. Um,
You mean that it's not Star Wars, where everything is just basically a container made of metals, and everything about nature has disappeared, and there's no complexity in the world, right?
yes, exactly, exactly. It's really trying to push another vision of the future, one where the complexity and the beauty of nature is still, there, and has not disappear, for the sake of building more advanced technological tools, so we can simplify human life. I think it's that future if we end up like this. But well, it's just my opinion.
Well, it's an opinion that has a great value, because I mean you're working on and we got to be talking about that with Interstellar. The idea of basically creating these pods that bring nature, that can seed nature in these places, so that when we go over there, there's already this. I mean, we're bringing pieces of Earth with us. Well, I mean, but before we go there, what would you say? Unfortunately, there's a great divide between the conservation environmental movement and the space movement. One sees space as part of the answers for the environmental and for conservation on Earth, and unfortunately, the conservation and environmental see space as at the expense of the planet. What would you say, trying to that in a way that we can bridge those narrative and do it together rather than separated?
Space is a mirror for us so first to go there and to challenge ourselves on how we can, survive out there. So it brings up a lot of questions, like, and also engineering questions, like, simple things like, life support and how do you survive in space. And so you have to come up with very innovative technologies, and all those technologies have application on Earth. I mean, it's been said and said, many times, but I'm gonna say it again. The spin-off of the systems and what was engineered for space travel and application on Earth is just like tremendously important. And so whether it's in medical, it's in food production, it's in it's the internet, is like, so it's kind of a nonsense to trying to be like, oh, space is bad because it's doing bad stuff on Earth. I mean, watching a movie on Netflix and using not not cleaning your Gmail inbox is costing a lot of carbon and a lot of pollution on this planet as well. So if you compare, I think, the figures and the impact of space exploration compared to other stuff on this planet, I don't think it's the first one to blame. Plus, second, the direct application of the technology on Earth, and is just like enormous. And another thing is also, if there was no space program, we will never know anything about the climate, not anything, but not that much about the climate of our planet. The only way we can monitor and understand what's going on out here, it's because we have, satellites, and we have like cameras and everything taking picture, and we can monitor our planet. And so I think this discussion, when it's still coming on the table, I'm like, well, okay, let's go back to some of the basics here, and like, and the reality, and the reality of what it is. And then I think it's the other part is really linked to, if you look at what happened in 1969. So everyone was like just watching them moon landing, and it was like it's space bring people together. So it has this unique power of, no matter which country, where you live, what you do, there is something that is making us all feel human and earthlings when we look at, an astronaut in the space station, or someone walking on the surface of the moon. And this power to reunite people is very important, and especially right now, because we have a lot of crisis, political crisis. I mean, I'm French. We just had like huge riots over the past few weeks. So, but so it's helping people get together, and realizing as well, we are part of like one big spaceship, which is the planet Earth. And so yeah, and it's really needed, this like feeling of like belonging, and feeling that we belong all together to a submission. And space has the power to do that, so we can use space actually to gather people to do important things on this planet.
And if you look at the process of life on Earth, or even within the humans, or even within families, leaving the nest is always part. There's always some individuals, when the children leave the family home, is not at the expense of the parents. Obviously, it's to elevate the wealth of the family. But even within siblings, you have one who's going to go to the big city, and one who's going to stay behind. And the one who goes to the big city becomes the black sheep because he has abandoned, the family. But if we go back a little bit bigger than this, when there was the great migration from Europe to North America, it was said back then that a lot of people abandoned, Europe when it needed the most. But the reality is that leaving Europe allowed some to start from scratch and create a new vision. And that new vision was North America, and ultimately it elevated the entire world. And space is going to be doing that same thing for some who find themselves not represented, or they don't see, they want a fresh start. Space will be that new opportunity, the new land of opportunity. And we're going to space with the desire to do better than the previous systems. I mean, this is like, even kids, they don't want to repeat the same mistakes as their parents. when North America started, they didn't want to repeat the same mistakes that you had found in Europe, and it's going to be the same thing in space. So that this is the process of evolution, and in life, it's part of the process. It's a little bit harder for people to understand now because we're at the scale of a planet, but it's nothing different than everything that we've done or that how life works in the past. Um, Barbara, I'm kind of curious. So you grew up at with the interest of space, and you went into venture capitalists. Was it for you your business plan on how to connect your interest in space, and you saw venture capitalist as a tool for that, or what was exactly the process, the journey?
Well, so it was not planned. I would have initially. I wanted to do engineering school and become an engineer. Um, but the thing is, during high school, I had like top of my class in mathematics, biology, um, philosophy, like all of that, and not chemistry, not physics. So I had the same teacher for 3 years. And I hated her, and she hated me as well. I think. I mean, I don't know. I don't like this word, but we didn't have a good relationship, and so I had like really bad grades in physics, so I could not qualify for engineering school. And so that's how I went to business school. So it was not my first choice, but then that's what happened. And so, but this is a good thing because I study, finance and management and how to build companies, and I think it's this is what is needed right now in this new space area. Is it's not only about the engineering and how you find solutions. It's also how do you build sustainable business model, because space is hard, and especially right now with this new space area, we're going towards this lunar economy, and this is happening, but it's taking some time. But at the same time, you need time to develop the system and the technology. So how do you manage this gap in time, funding, money, and and I think this is where my background in finance and in managing companies is actually helping us, because otherwise it's pretty hard to do a company that wants to build a greenhouse on the moon or Mars and have a sustainable business. If you don't think about very with the business and finance approach, it's hard to do.
So did you go, when you said business school, did you go to the hautes études commerciales or?
Tout à fait. Well, your French is really good.
Yes, actually, I did go to the hautes études commerciales à Montréal in
Okay.
my high school. So, and for me, the when I was in high school, my grades were super high, but all my attention was really good in the class. But the second that I stepped out of the class, my mind was gone somewhere else. So gradually, by the time with university, my grades kept going down and down, and I ended up going in marketing. So tell us, so you got VC, you started that detour, even that teacher. Now you look back and brought value into your journey, and you created Interstellar. How did that come about? And tell us more about that technology and what you and your company are trying to achieve.
Sure. So I was an investor investing in deep tech and hardware companies. The fund is called HCBC right now, is still there, up and running. And I was based between San Francisco and Paris. So I left in 2017 for like different like disagreements with my co-founder. And also because the companies we're financing were not really providing solution, to make the world a better place. We're financing a lot of gadgets and all of that. So I left, and then I started working on food production system, but for Earth. So initially I was thinking that, one of the biggest challenge we have on this planet is agriculture. It uses too much water. It's, destroying the soil. It's responsible for a lot of the diversity loss. And so I was thinking of closed loop system to grow plants on Earth. And when I was doing this work and training myself, it was at the same time that SpaceX proved they can reuse the boosters. And so the dream of, living on other planet, I was, I drew some greenhouses when I was a kid, and so this, like, on other planets. So this dream kicked back, and then I was like, well, Earth, space, I'm struggling. Space exploration. If we want to become a self-sustaining civilization, we will need food production system. But at the same time, there is like, this is really important that we do things here on Earth. So I was really struggling. And then on the advice of my sister told me, like, what if you can do, one stone, two birds? And so this is how I started thinking on the application of space technology on Earth when it comes to food production, and vice versa. And so I had no training, not an engineer. So reach out to a friend whose name is Adeo Resi. He's a good friend of Elon Musk. And I sent him a very, I think it's cute message. I was like, okay, dude, bro, I have two options. One option is I start a new company, but I will need some help because I need to, get trained and be able to talk to engineers and to recruit people. Second option, you introduce me to Elon Musk and I pitch him and I can build a department within SpaceX. Well, option one. I'm kidding. I'm a big fan of SpaceX and what they're doing. But so option one, and so I arrived back in California, got connected to many people at NASA, at SpaceX, and a lot of support towards the journey and what I want to build, and I spent a lot of time at Space Portal. So Space Portal at NASA Ames Center, Bruce Pittman, Dan Rasky, Lynn Harper, they were the ones who got me, on track to study a life support system. And that's how everything started. So I gained enough knowledge and confidence to start the company in September 2018. And so I did in LA. And that was, that was the first, that's how everything started there.
What was one of the most unexpected discoveries for you in the process of learning about these closed loop systems? It was something that, I mean, obviously you went in, you didn't have all that the knowledge. That didn't stop you. You kept going. In fact, you figured out how to get all these elements that were missing in your vision to get there. What was one of the most unexpected discoveries along the way?
Um, so the first year, so September, so 2019 was really working and trying to, propose a new design for a station on the moon, and a station point on the moon and then Mars, but like a new conceptual design, how you can deploy very quickly and scale for a construction of a whole city. And then when deep diving on the space station and how the life support system is working, where I had no idea it required so much human maintenance, and that this aluminum can that is touring around the Earth is not in a really good shape. And that was the first thing I really discovered and understood, in 2019, is that there is a need to really work on automation of life support system. And life support system are key to future of space exploration. And so, in the way it's the yeah, I mean, there's a whole book, or like, how to call that, but like a document that NASA put together, where they are themselves, going through the issues of life support system in the space station. And so I thought everything was very well done, and I discovered it was not, and it was very, very manual, very artisanal, not automated, and so it means there is room for for improvement and for innovation, and so that's what's pushed me towards working on life support system and regenerative life support system that don't require all the time resupply.
So the segue to that is what you're working on, the pod right now. That is, it's gone from a proof of concept to, like, now you're getting orders from different companies. So what is the product? What is that pod? Is it something that is parallel to? This is not something that humans will live in, or you sent it before and then it prepares the arrival. So tell us more. What is it and how it works?
Sure. So 2019 we started with the first proposal for a vision of a station, which was called eBios, which stands for Experimental Bioregenerative Station. The station was composed of different modules, inflatable modules. All of them, each of them is a controlled environment, autonomous controlled environment. So it means it will recreate the climate you need depending on the activity you have inside the module. And so the most complicated module that requires the much more, temperature range and like work on the atmospheric and everything is the food production module, because you increase the level of CO2 to accelerate the production of the plants. You can play with like temperature between 5 to like 35 degrees Celsius. So you need like uniformity of the humidity and all of that. So I was like, okay, let's pick the most complicated one and let's work on it. And also it happens to be the one where there is the most terrestrial application on food production and greenhouse with which what I was, I started initially with. And so we started working on the greenhouse, and from a conceptual design for a lunar station, we design a product we can sell on Earth. And so it's called the BioPod. So it's a biofarm. It's a high precision farming solution. It's a new generation of indoor farm, where it's not a building. We don't require any foundation. So within a few days, we can deploy the BioPod next to our customers' facilities. The BioPod is pretty big. It's much bigger than what people think when you see it. It sits on feet, and then the shell inside which you have all the hydraulic and atmospheric system, like is starting above my head. So in terms of size, so to give an order of magnitude, it's 11 meter long, 6 meter wide, and 5 meter high. And so we install the BioPod. BioPod will inflate itself. You fill up the tank of water. You have to power it, so you power it to the grid. And then it recreates by itself the climate. And so it knows what climate to recreate depending on the plants you're growing inside. So at the lab, we have 25,000 facility next to Paris. We've been testing different plants and we've been building those programs. And we feed the BioPod with those programs. So BioPod has a catalog of plants, and when it's growing this, it's playing this program and it's adapting by itself depending on the real-time data it's getting from the sensors. And so we've been focusing on rare plants, expensive plants. And so we don't do leafy greens, we don't do herbs. We can, but it's a super advanced tool, so it's more interesting to grow expensive stuff inside. So we do high margin products, low volume, and our main customers are natural ingredients company. So you have the largest cosmetic company in the world that is one of our customer, and we'll announce it very soon. And we made them buy BioPods, which I think is it's a game changer in the industry. So it's moving from a lunar concept to a terrestrial product, to a product our customers buying because we're solving like so many of their problems. And it's designed for Earth. Like the version we have right now is not designed for space application. It will not serve, like the water system is designed for Earth gravity. The membrane, it's a 2-layer inflated membrane, but it's like 2 layers not enough for protection against solar radiation in space. So it's probably going to be like a 4 layers membrane with water and air that we will do for the moon. So it's really an Earth product. And then we will make a space product, but sustainable business model. You got to make a revenue and provide solution for the planet. This is what we're doing.
And how do you find the balance? Because nature doesn't always follow what we want it to follow. Like I always love to hear these stories when, like, even in Vancouver, the Stanley Park or Central Park, like when people want nature in a natural way and then they realize that it goes totally the other way, like you need to create boundaries or you need to direct nature. So how do you find this balance of having these systems where you have to let it do what it needs to do, but also in the direction that you want it to go? How do you figure that out, that middle point?
Um, alors, there is it's a very good question. There is nature is hard to control. It doesn't like to be controlled. So the best thing you can do is to try to understand and to provide what's what it needs, so you can get to a common ground. Let's say to a common direction. And so in our case, first we start by studying the plants and working on the sourcing, like the seeds or the cuttings, and where we are buying them, how we get them. You need stability in the plants that you're using, because otherwise you can develop what is called a recipe. But if the vegetal material is not stable enough, the recipe you learn is not going to work on the next plant. So the sourcing, the seeds, all this part is like really, really key. Then studying the plants and figuring out what it needs. So come up with this recipe combining temperature, atmosphere, watering, nutrient solution, and knowing that this is the minimum viable recipe that the plant will need to survive. So when you have that, then you can recreate a climate and conditions for the plants to grow. And then it's a lot of iteration. So it means you do experiments. So we have science programs at Interstellar where for different plants we test the impact of several conditions and how the plant's reacting. So we work with laboratories and we send the plants after to do the metabolite composition analysis, and also we pushing towards a bit of like epigenetics because the environmental condition is actually affecting the DNA of the plant, and so it's a lot of like trial and test, but the key thing is to have an approach where you go and you find this minimum recipe, viable recipe for the plant, and then you'll find amazing things along the way as well.
Are you working with? I was reading about these companies that are genetically engineering these plants to produce more with the carbon, or I mean, obviously, what we've been doing with agriculture, which is we manipulate the something. I mean, strawberries, tomatoes, they're so far away from what they were in the wild. So now that you're building these systems, are you also working with these companies to kind of design plants and organisms that can fit and really be productive in those systems that you design?
Not right now, but it's in our pipeline. Yeah. Right now, we use existing plants, so we sort them from different providers, for cosmetic, pharmaceutical application, also reforestation. We're going to announce very soon a partnership with a company that is working on reforestation. And so we use the BioPod as a nursery. Like we have super optimized conditions, so the plant will grow super healthy before you can put it in the field. And so, but next, yeah, but bioengineered plant is in our yes list.
And how much, like at the moment, because ultimately in the future, when it goes to space, a lot of these, a lot of the process of the pod will be automated. And but right now, when it's on Earth, how much involvement of the humans are needed to make it happen, or a lot of it is already automated, and you don't have to touch it for 2 3 months.
So the seedling, the pruning, and the harvest is not automated. So you have still human intervention. We haven't put any robotic arms inside. It's everything regarding, the human doesn't even have to go through the program. Like the biopod is just doing it itself. So you don't program anything. So there is a little bit of intervention, but it's really minimum. Optimizing human time and crew time was always at the core of the design. It's like, and then it's trade-off because it's like crew time, even on Earth, it's crew time with power consumption. So, well, maybe I get human to do a little bit of the task instead of replacing everything by this, because then, you have trade-offs you need to make. That's why we didn't pick the robotization at first. Our second product, we actually have a product which is called Nucleus, that we built for NASA Deep Space Food Challenge. And so the requirements were crew of 4 astronauts, 2 years mission, fulfill nutritional gaps. And so NASA has identified that for long-term manned mission, pre-packaged food will not cover all the nutritional needs of astronauts. And so they were looking for a solution for that. And so that's how they came up for the with the Methuselah Foundation and there's a Canadian Space Agency for the Deep Space Food Challenge competition. So we won phase 1, phase 2. We're waiting for the results for phase 3 now. And so we have a prototype of, it's different than a BioPod. It's actually, the form factor is completely different. It's 9 cubes. Each cube is a controlled environment. We grow different things inside, but it's the same concept. You see, it's a controlled environment within a structure and fully automated. And so in this one, we're growing insects, mushroom, vegetable, microgreens. And same, crew time was very important for us. And so it's actually an adaptation of our software that we are using for the space for this NASA product. And crew time for astronauts is about like 4 hours a week with our system currently designed. Will be much better in the future, but 4 hours, I think it's pretty good a week for astronauts compared to what they have right now.
Nice. Now, in the movie The Martian, Matt Damon survives by using human waste for fertilizer. I assume that it is an element of the equation that you cannot dismiss, and you have to figure out how to use for these for these modules in space. But are you also looking at them while on Earth, or where is it right now in the equation at Interstellar?
Sure. So right now we're not looking at human waste. We're focusing on the inedible part of the plant. And so that's the concept of the food production system we submitted to NASA Deep Space Food Challenge, is actually reusing the inedible part of the plant and giving it to insects that will destroy it and turn it into some kind of form of a substrate. And we also use the unedible parts to grow mushroom on top of that. So we're getting like one step at a time towards closing the loop. And reusing the waste. We're not integrating human waste right now because it's a little bit tricky with the safety and pathogens and all of that. But we will also in the future. When it comes to Earth, it's mostly same. It's reusing the inedible part, and how we can recycle that.
Yeah, as soon as you get to space, the incentives are different, right? I mean, on Earth, it's not really an issue. We can discard the human waste because we're surrounded by resources, and it's easier to kind of discard them than to really look into using them. But when you get to space, you can't afford, this is the resources that you have to figure out how to reuse. I mean, this is one of the things that I've always said. There's going to be a revolution in recycling, in reusing material, because when you go to space, that atom of transformed carbon is so precious that you have to figure out a way to just, make it, reuse it, and never to leave it. The idea of opening your side gate of Starship and just throwing the garbage away would be the most ridiculous thing, because this is gold. I mean, this is transformed carbon that is necessary for everything. So the incentives in space are 1,000 times bigger to be efficient and to create that closed loop system compared to on Earth. Barbara, obviously you're at the beginning of a long career, but already there's a lot of things that you've done that gives you a certain wisdom. And for anyone, whether they're in their mid-career or they're at the beginning of their career, what would be your 3 words of wisdom?
Well, dream. You see, I like the dream a lot. Dream, hope, and action.
And a lot of it is because I think you're really like an example of that. Is don't let the what you don't know be a stopping factor for not wanting to do what you want to do, because so much of what you've done is actually kind of go in places that you didn't know, but your passion was behind it. But then you trusted yourself in figuring out how to move forward. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think it's, it's like be committed to your dream. You can do it. If you've seen it in your head, this it means it can happen. It's doable. But you have to be very, it's a lot of work. And so it comes also with being honest with yourself, and not to be afraid of, stepping out of your comfort zone and just going there, but be has to be, a lot of humility, and it's a lot of work, and it's really the do, like it's very important to make things, not only being like this romantic fantasy, but actually to be part of the one that are making, because when you make, you know what's wrong, and then you iterate, and then you make innovation happen. So yeah.
I mean, that's how discoveries get made. The unfortunate reality is that failure mistakes are part of the equations. You cannot get an innovation without making a series of mistakes along the way. And it's not that you wake up wanting to do mistakes. The path to an innovation and the path to a mistake is exactly the same. The only difference is the hindsight that gives you the capacity to say, well, that didn't work, but the process was the same. And so when we look, we understand that these steps when it comes to technology or science, but the reality, it's like that for everything. It's like that for personal development. It's like that for culture, for society. We're constantly having to move forward, and life is messy by design because you're always kind of moving forward, not knowing exactly what works or what doesn't work. And sometimes what worked for one person doesn't work for the other. Two teams will do exactly the same thing, and for some reason one will be successful and then the other one will fail. So having to negotiate life like this is messy. That's what nature is. um, Laura, this is fascinating. I mean, it's I know that your company has been getting a lot of attraction, so extremely fortunate to have you today on the Future of Space. There's going to be even more stuff coming soon. We're looking forward to for the press release that's going to come soon. We'll get all the links in the description and the comment if people want to reach you. I mean, you're pretty easy. They can contact you on LinkedIn, correct?
Yeah. People can contact me on LinkedIn. I reply. I admire resilience and persistence. So if I don't reply the first time, don't hesitate to send another message. I do my best to reply as fast as I can.
Just one more thing before we end this conversation. You were born in France. You've spent a lot of time in the US. There's obviously pros and cons from both countries. France, for a long time, was recognized to be kind of sluggish in the entrepreneur sector. Um, is it changing? Is it like Europe kind of catching up a little bit more to the American concept of entrepreneurs?
Yes, it's changing, and it's and there are a lot of very talented entrepreneurs in Europe. The reality is that the hiring and the management of the company is really hard in Europe. It's really hard, and so honestly, very often say, if you can make it in Europe, well, you can make it in America. um, but I'm glad I have both. The truth is, I'm in California right now, and it feels like really home and surrounded by the people who are actually, very active in making this vision of the future happen, whether it's in space or on Earth. And bridging with Europe, and bringing Europe need the nothing is impossible attitude that Americans have, but we don't have that in Europe. So I think I'm more American in this sense than European.
Listen, I agree with you. I'm Canadian and I've lived most of my life in the US precisely because of that. So So yes, I agree. Barbara, it was a pleasure to have you today. I'm looking forward. We've our path have crossed several times. I'm looking for the next time, and we'll share a glass of wine at that moment.
We will, as
All
francophiles.
right. Good luck. Yes, absolutely. Good luck, Barbara.
Thank you, Daniel.